So if you watched the first part of this series on getting the most out of Crocoblock's JetEngine, you'll have seen how to set up your own basic real estate website. I took you through all the basics, and in this video I'm going to take you through and show you exactly how you can use JetSmartFilters to start filtering, searching, sorting, all of that data. Now this is one of those things that's an integral part to building more advanced websites, and it can seem very daunting to start off with. But by the end of this video, you're going to have a great understanding of exactly how you can start to use this incredibly powerful searching and filtering tool in conjunction with JetEngine. So once you've got everything installed, you're ready to start taking a look at building things. Now if you haven't seen the first part of this series, I'd recommend taking a look at that. I'll drop a link in the description below so you can check that out right now and then come back to this when you're ready. However, if you have seen that, then join me as I jump over into the dashboard of WordPress and start building things with JetSmartFilters. So let's just take a quick look at what we're going to be working with. Now, these properties and all the templates that have been set up are based upon the first video in this small series. If you haven't checked that out and you want to see how things are set up, please take a look at that. I'll drop a link in the description below, along with a link to the playlist for all of these JetEngine plugin tutorials that I've got on the channel. So what we ultimately have is, in this case, 4 different properties. They are flats, they are houses, apartments, they have different prices, they're in different areas, all those kinds of things. What you'd normally expect to see in any kind of listing-based website. And what I've done is I've gone ahead and used JetSmartFilters to create some filters, to create some sort of slider ranges, a search, and also the ability to sort these results into whatever order we want. So let's take a quick look at each of these and how they work, and also how they can work in combination with each other. And this is one of the key things. These do all work in combination with each other. So we could choose an apartment and a price list, and then sort those values based upon the price in it, either highest to lowest or lowest to highest, and all that will work out. So let me just demonstrate. First thing we have is to base this upon the sort order. So currently you can see we've got highest to lowest, lowest to highest. We can add more inside there, so we can have multiple different kind of sorting options, but I've kept it really simple just to demonstrate the technique. So at the moment we are going from lowest. So let's go from highest to lowest. So you can see now price from 750,000 right the way down to 5,000. If we want to, we can also come over and we can search for just apartments, and you can see this filters this down. And we could now, if we wanted to, filter this again based upon this slider. And you can see once we do that, we're basing this from 100,000 to 750,000. So we've got everything laid out the way we want. So these are stackable filters. They stack on top of each other. But it's super easy to set up. You can see we can come back out of this and choose flats. And you can see now that adjusts the values that we're going to see. And if we had multiple different values, so let's just say we get rid of the lowest priced option. So we now have only 3 entries, currently looking at the most expensive down to the cheapest. We could flip that if we wanted to, as it's simple as that. So it's a super simple way of working. Everything works in conjunction with each other. And in the next step, I'm going to show you how we start to create these various different filters, sort options and searches and so on. So let's start off by taking a look at probably the easiest of all these different filters and sorts and so on. And that is the sorting option. So we're going to do everything inside the default property archive. This is where we're going to put all our filters and all those kinds of things. Now, the difference between applying a sort and applying a filter or a search is you don't create a sort. You just basically apply that based upon a widget inside the template or the page that you want to use. Everything else is pretty much done inside the Smart Filter section. So let's just come into the default property archive and let's edit that with Elementor to start off with. You can see we've got a placeholder on the right hand side so we can drop in our filters when we create those. We're going to put our search at the top. Now if I scroll down on the left hand side through the widgets, you can see we've got a section called filters. And inside there we have a ton of different types of filters we can pull in. So let's just take out the sort option. All the filters, you're going to create the filter inside the Smart Filter section, and then you're going to use the widgets inside your Elementor page builder to pull in the relevant widget type and then tell it which of those filters you want to apply. So this will all become clear now once we go through. So first of all, like I say, let's start off with that simple sorting option. You can see we've got sorting filters. So we're going to grab that and drop that at the top of all our properties. This drops in the placeholder and it pre-fills out a range of different kinds of sorts. So you may find these all work exactly the way that you want them to. However, we can also get creative and build these out ourselves. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So the first thing we've got is the content tab. And inside there, we've got this filter is for. We'll click on there and you can see we get a ton of different options. Now it's worth bearing in mind at this point in time, JetSmartFilters works best with JetEngine or WooCommerce. If you're using advanced custom fields, there are certain parts of this that will work okay, and currently some parts that don't work at all. So it's worth bearing in mind if you're using ACF that I would recommend taking a look at something like Search and Filter Pro, which I've covered on the channel, or Search WP and Facet WP, which again I've covered on the channel. I'll drop links to those down in the description so you can take a look at those if you're working with ACF. So what we're going to do is we're saying that this is a JetEngine based sort, because all of these have been created through JetEngine. So we're going to choose JetEngine. We then have the apply type. In other words, how are we going to use this filter? Do we want to automatically update when we change something? Or do we want to do something like select a submit button so we can stack all the different things we want to do and then hit apply when we're ready? It's up to you how you want to work. If you have lots of different filters and sorting options, it may be better to use that apply button so anybody that's going through can set all those filters without that page refresh every time they make a change. Like I say, entirely up to you. Your bases are covered and you choose what is relevant. You can see apply type, we've got Ajax, page reload, or mixed. We're going to leave this to Ajax so it doesn't have to reload the page. This just makes a more seamless way of working. You could, though, if you wanted to, use page reload or a mixed combination of the two. We'll leave set to Ajax. Then it says apply on. You can see it says value change or click on apply button. We're going to set everything up to be a value change because we are just working with a very small set of filters and searches and so on. Like I say, up to you which way you want to work. So we leave value change. You can see it says show apply button. Obviously, if we chose the option to click on apply button, we could choose the apply button and you can see it adds that button in for us, gives us a label and so on, and we can set what we want inside there value wise. Let's uncheck that, put it back to value change, and everything is what we want. You can drop a label in if you want to, which would be good practice. You've also got the placeholder, which is just basically until you choose a value, you'll have that placed inside this drop-down list. Sort is perfectly fine, but you could change that to wherever you want in whatever language you're currently working with. Now, if you have multiple different sorts on the same page, you're going to have to set a query ID for each one of those so you don't get confused when it's actually trying to filter things out and sort and search and so on. So if you're using multiple options inside the same template file, set a query ID for each one of those. And that can be whatever you want. You could use a numeric value, a combination of numeric and text, something that just makes sense to you. Next up, we have the sorting list, and this is where all of the different options for the sorting come into play. As I said, you can see it pulls in 4 different options. Title from lowest to highest, highest to lowest, date from highest to lowest, and so on. Let's get rid of those first couple, and we're going to change this first one now. So you see it gives us the title, and it says by title. We're going to change that by price. Once we've done that, you can see it says order by, and then the order we want to use. Now, title isn't what we want to use. We want to use a custom field, the price field. I'm going to click to expand that out, and you can see this gives us a ton of options on how we want to sort things. For this example, we're going to use meta key numeric. Now, you've got meta key and meta key numeric. If you're working with numeric values, in this example, we're working with the price. We want to set that to the meta key numeric. If you were working with text values, maybe for example you wanted to sort things in alphabetical order, you use a meta key. So just make sure you choose the right one there from the options that are available. So we'll set the meta key numeric. We now need to put that meta key inside there. But what if you don't know what the meta key is and you've pulled this from a custom field you've set up as part of JetEngine? Well, it's easy to find out. If we just jump back over into WordPress, we're going to come down to JetEngine and we're going to open up post types. From there, we've got any of the post types we created, and for this example, it's the properties. So we can click to open that up, and we've got all our meta fields are listed at the bottom. And you can see next to each one of these, we've got in italics exactly what we're working with. So we click, open that up, and there's the name stroke ID. So I'm going to simply copy that from there. Just right click and copy. Then we can come back into this and we can say the meta key is going to be exactly that. That way we're not making any spelling mistakes. Plus it's also good to get into a naming convention. And what I tend to do is I'll always start it off with what the actual meta sort of type is. In other words, if we're dealing with properties, it'll always say property at the beginning, then a dash, and then the actual value thing is you have the meta field. So property price, property title, property name, property location. You kind of get the picture. Okay, so we've now created our first sort. So we can close that down. We'll duplicate it. We'll come in to edit that. We're simply going to set that to be descending, and we're going to change this now from lowest to highest to highest to lowest. Simple as that. Now, obviously, you could stack these, as many of these as you want to. So we've now created our sort. Everything is set up. We'll hit update on there. Let's just jump over now to our test page and refresh this to get rid of any of the old values we had in there. And there's our sort. If we click, you can see by price, lowest to highest, and then highest to lowest. So we can click, and you can see whichever one we choose, everything gets sorted based upon that value. So it's super simple how to do this kind of thing. There's nothing complex in there whatsoever. It literally is a case of setting a couple of values, making sure that you use the correct meta key field if you're using, dynamic content that you pulled in through JetEngine. If not, then obviously you can set something from one of the other values that are in there. So that's the sort side of things, all, pardon the pun, sorted. Let's take a look now at creating some of these filters. I'm just quickly going to pause the video at this point and say that if you're enjoying this and you'd like to learn more about getting more from WordPress, the Jet plugins, all that kind of good stuff, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, smash the bell icon below to be notified as soon as I release new content. And finally, if you'd like to help support the channel to create more content like this, please consider using those affiliate links in the description below. It costs you absolutely no more money, but it does give a small percentage back to the channel and helps me create more content. Anyway, let's just get back on with the JetSmartFilters video. Now, to start working with the filters, all we need to do is come into the Smart Filters option, and you can see we can list any of the smart filters we have created, or we can add a new one. So let's click on Add New. First thing we're going to do is give this a title. So we're just going to say this is going to be Property Type. I'll copy that from there, and we'll paste that into the label and the active filter label. So once we've done that, we can now choose the filter type. Click and you can see we've got quite a few different options: checkbox list, select, ranges, and so on. Now, I'm not going to cover all of these today in this video. I'm going to cover a few of them, and it should give you a good understanding of how you can start to use these. And then I would recommend experimenting with some of the others to see exactly how they work. So the first one we're going to do is going to be a checkbox list. So we're going to click on that. That will now open up the relevant context information that it needs to have input to be able to use this particular filter. So the data source, where are we going to grab the data from to fill out these checkboxes and ultimately filter against? Very easy. We're going to click and we're going to choose a taxonomy, because what we've done is, if you go to the properties and hover over, you can see property type is set up as a taxonomy. You don't have to use it that way, but I just tend to find when it comes to organizing my content underneath their custom post types, grouping things together just makes more sense to me with a taxonomy. Obviously, your mileage may vary on that. You may work in different ways, and you can still reference the data that you want directly from within all of these filters inside JetSmartFilters. Okay. So we told it it's a checkbox list, the data source is a taxonomy. We now tell it exactly which taxonomy to use. So we're going to click on categories, and we're going to scroll down until we find property types. Next up, we have the relational operator. Now, I've got a basic understanding of what's going on here, so please bear with me if I make a mistake on this, because finding any documentation on this is sketchy to say the least. But union, it returns a relationship containing all of the values that appear in both of the specified relations, whereas intersect returns a relation containing all examples that appear in both of the two specified relations. If you make sense of that, you're a better person than I am. But it's just one of those things that I tend to leave this to union for most of these examples. Next up, we've got show the only child current items. Well, I'm not using any child items in this, but if you were using hierarchical, you could set it so it didn't put the parent values, it would only show the actual child values. And you can, if you want to, also group terms by parents, which I'm going to set to be true. Is the checkbox a meta field JetEngine? Now, this is one of those things that can lead to a little bit of confusion. Is the checkbox a meta field JetEngine? This option should be enabled if you need to filter data from a checkbox meta field type. Well, in this example, we leave that set to off. Then we've got exclude and include. We're going to just leave those set to none. We're not going to worry about those at all. You could, if you want to, exclude or include various different things, but we want to search against everything. Query settings is basically empty because we don't need to set any query value at this point. If you are using something like WooCommerce, you can see listed underneath are a list of the predefined values that you tend to use as part of WooCommerce. So things like underscore price, underscore WC average rating, and so on. So you can use those if you are using WooCommerce. In this example, we're going to leave it as is. Now, this is one of those things that the basics are pretty straightforward, but they would really, really benefit from simply having something like a little help icon next to this relational operator. So anybody that doesn't understand what this is going to do, which I could imagine would be quite a lot of people, myself included, would just make life a lot easier. So please, Crocoblock, if you're watching this video and you've got this far in it, please drop in some help icons for things that are maybe totally understandable to you, but for a lot of people, your normal layman, they're going to look at that and think, I have no idea what you're even talking about. Anyway, that's how we create the property type. So we're going to click on Publish on there. So that's our first filter set up. The next thing we need to do now is just drop that filter into our layout. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to our templates and into the theme builder. And from there, we're going to open up our default property archive inside Elementor. And once we're in there, we're going to drop in the relevant widget. So we're going to scroll down until we get to those filter widgets. And then we've got the checkbox filter, which is the first option. Drag and drop that over to the right-hand column. That puts a placeholder in. We now just need to go through and tell it what filter we want to use and set up some of those parameters and styling if we want to. I'm going to click. You can see property type is the only option available. I'm going to click on there. This filter 4, we're going to click, again, this is going to be JetEngine, but obviously if you were using WooCommerce or something, or the JetWoo builder and creating a filter based upon those kinds of things, then you'd choose the relevant option for you. Click on JetEngine, again, we're going to leave this to Ajax, apply on value change. We're going to leave all these other options. Again, if you were using multiple different types of checkbox filters for various different values, make sure you give it a query ID that's unique for every single entry inside your layout. We are going to drop in the show filter label because you can see that basically puts the title of this particular filter in there, which just makes the life a little bit easier. And if we want to, we can come to the style section and we can adjust and style pretty much all the aspects of this. And I think this is where one of the strengths of working with the JetSmartFilters and JetEngine comes in. You have full styling controls, whereas if you were using something like Search and Filter Pro or Facet WP, you don't really have the same level of styling to make sure that everything integrates into your design flawlessly. So a big sort of thumbs up for this when it comes to JetSmartFilters. So like I say, if we wanted to, we could come to the label side of things. We can choose a color on there. If we want to set that to blue, for example, we'll choose dark gray. We'll set the typography to be a little heavier. And what we can do is we'll just come into the line height and pop that down a little bit, just so we give ourselves a little bit of breathing space. So we'll hit update on there. Once we've done that, let's just jump over to our test page and refresh this. And there's our filter. So now if we click on flats, providing everything is okay, you can see that now filters is out to just show the flats. We can tag in houses. You can see this is now sort of stacking things on top of each other. So we're not sub-filtering, we're stacking things. So we're now looking at flats and houses. Then if we want to, we can come in and we can say we want to sort these. We'll go from highest to lowest, and you can see everything filters down now based upon the filter criteria and also the sort criteria we've set up on there. So super simple to stack up on top of each other, all barring, like I say, some of those little things that could do with some clarification when you're actually working with setting filters up. So let's create now our second type of filter. Add a new filter in, and we're going to give this the title of price filter. And again, we're going to do the same thing then for the filter label and active filter label. The filter type, this time we're going to choose the range option. And you can see now we've got a lot of different options because this is going to be set up in a completely different way to the previous example. So the values prefix, and again, I think this is something that would definitely benefit from just a couple of those little help icons that just allow you to see exactly what they're talking about. Like values prefix, I kind of know what they mean because I've been using this for a little while, but for someone that's coming along that's new to this, it may not make any sense. So what it basically means is to put a prefix before whatever value you're going to use as part of the actual range. That's what it really means. But like I say, it would just make sense to put some info in there to help us out. So we're just going to drop in the pound value because we're working with UK pounds. We're not going to worry about a suffix because nothing's coming after the value we want to put in. The thousand separator, In the UK, we use the comma, the decimal separator, or the full stop. That's perfectly fine. But we're going to have 0 decimal places because we're working with large values of thousands and tens of thousands as opposed to smaller values. Now, we've got the minimum and maximum values. Now, this is something that if you take a look at some of the other options that are out there, you've got more control over this. In other words, what I mean is, you could have this, I'd like to see this, actually pull in the values from the data that we set up. So when we choose what field data we want to work with, we can actually pull in the values from that. You can do it if you're working with WooCommerce, but you can't do it if you're working with JetEngine meta fields. So I set a minimum value of 100,000 and a maximum value of 1 million with steps of 10,000. So that just means that because we're working with large values, we can control how big or small those steps are. You can see it says get min maximum value dynamically. If you click on there, the only option we have is WooCommerce. And like I say, I would just like to see some more options in there. Next up, we've got the query variable. And this is exactly the same as what we saw before we were doing the sorts. So we're going to put exactly the same thing is because we're working with the price that's based on the property. So we're going to drop in the property price query variable. And like I say, this is just the name of the meta field or the ID of the meta field that you want to query against. Again, like I say, let's have some little help things on there just to clear things up if anybody gets confused. So that's all the options set up on there. We'll hit publish on that. And we do exactly the same thing again. Now we're going to jump over into our theme builder and we'll open up our archive inside Elementor. And we're going to just come down to the widgets and we're going to just find the widget that we want, which in this example is the range filter. Drag and drop that over there. Same again. We're going to do the price filter. Filter for JetEngine, Ajax value change, show the filter label. If you have multiple of these on the page, set your query ID, style accordingly, and you are done. That's pretty much it. So I'm not going to sort of like take you over and demonstrate this now because we know how this is going to work. We'll just hit update on there and we're going to come in and create the very last of those filters, which is the property search filter. So let's just jump back out of this and go back into our smart filters and add a new smart filter. We'll give it a title, filter label, filter active label, filter type. We're going to come down and we're going to set this to be a search. We'll leave the placeholder of search. That's fine. Next up, you've got the search by and it says default WordPress search. We can also open that up and say by custom field form query variable or from query variable. So what does that mean? If we use the default WordPress search, it will search inside pretty much everything. In other words, it's not going to differentiate between the title and the sort of the content, the information about it and so on. It'll also look in custom fields and things. However, if you only want to search against a single specific location, and I mean like a custom field or something, you can set that up to use the query variable. And if we click on there, you can see that opens up the query variable. So there are different times we may want to use one or the other. For this example, we're going to leave this as the default WordPress search and leave that as it is. That hides the query settings underneath. We'll save this and we are good to go. So we'll just jump back into our templates and our theme builder and we'll open up our archive and we'll drop in those extra filters. Okay, so most of the things are inside this. Let's just do a quick search for search. You can see there's the icon. We're going to drag and drop that to the top of the page. Select our property search. Filter for, again, JetEngine, so it knows it's going to look for JetEngine data. You can see it's put this apply filters button, which we don't really want, even though the apply type is set to Ajax. Now don't worry, it's easy to change. Click on Ajax and it just says Ajax on typing. So what it does is it'll update your search as you start typing. And all you need to do then is set the minimum number of letters that are required before that search will start searching. So it's set to 3 by default, which generally should be perfectly fine for most use cases. So we're going to say, yes, we're going to show the filter label. So that'll put the filter label above. And it just means we've got each of those different parts of this now set up. So it'll search through and it'll filter and everyone knows exactly what's going on. So we'll hit update on there. We'll just jump over now into our test page and refresh everything on there. So let's just refresh our page. And there's our search, our property type, our filter, and our sort are all set up. So what we can do is now, let's just say we want to search for beach. And there we go, there's our beachfront studio. Now obviously these filters are not going to make any difference because we're only actually returning one value. But obviously if you were turning multiple values with search of the term of beach, then you could then go ahead and filter these based upon apartments, flats, houses. You could sort these in whatever order you want, the lowest to the highest, highest to lowest, and you can even filter things down then based upon the price range that you may have for your particular property search. So that really is all there is to it. There are still quite a few different search and filter types that are available, but what this should do, like I say, is give you the confidence to be able to go ahead and take a look at how some of these other options work. Obviously, if you find that you're not getting any sense out of it and you want me to cover things in more detail again, drop some comments in the comment section below and I can take a look at covering all of the different filter types to get you up to speed with every single different option that's available as part of JetSmartFilters. JetSmartFilters, that's how we can go about using those, combining them with the data we've created with JetEngine and start to create a much more feature-packed WordPress website. Hopefully you've learned a ton of new skills from this video, and if you have, drop the comments, questions, feedback, or anything else you'd like to see in future videos in that comment section below. All of the applicable links are in the description, including the playlists that are referenced in this particular video. As always, my name has been Paul C. This has been WPTuts. Until next time, take care.